Oh, Vanessa.
Hello.
Doodle doo.
Do do.
Doo doo. Yes.
How are you doing today?
Good. How about yourself?
I'm doing great. Thank you for coming on. This is such an honor.
Are you still okay for time?
I'm still okay for time.
Okay.
We are all good. How about we start off with who are you?
I'm Nardwuar, the human serviette from Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. Speaking to Vanessa from KC.
KCR.
Doo
Ron,
doo.
welcome. How about we start with you giving an introduction just for those who are not familiar with you?
Well, as I said, I'm Nardwuar, the human serviette from Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. I love to do interviews. I also play in two rock and roll bands, the Evaporators and the Goblins. And when I do radio interviews, I take the audio from a videotape player because you might think, oh, I'm from CITR Radio in Vancouver, Canada, where I volunteered, a college radio station. But how do you put video on the radio? Well, I just take the audio and put the audio on the radio. I've been doing that for years. I also freelance to different organizations. And now, with the new generation being able to upload from your phone, I am able to explore YouTube and TikTok and Facebook and all the other means of that are out there. But yeah, in the early days of CITR radio, there was no internet. So what you broadcast is only if you caught it.
Yeah,
And do.
do.
So I'm not sure if that sort of explains me. Does it? Who am I? Who is Nardwuar Human Serviette? Like I have a hard time explaining myself. Who am I?
But does anyone know who they really are? It's a difficult question if you really think about it.
Thank you for answering that. That's what I thought. It's hard enough for me. It's hard enough for you. It's hard enough for anybody. Thanks for putting
Exactly.
in a clarification.
Of course. And people know Nardwuar, but do they know about Nardwuar? How did you start doing celebrity interviews?
Well, I kind of alluded to that earlier by volunteering at CITR, the university radio station in Vancouver, Canada. So
Mm.
just doing a show on CITR, I began as a regular DJ, just playing music, but it was sort of hard. At the end of the show, all these records scattered everywhere. And I was like, okay, I'll play one song, interview a band, and then play another song. So that's how it kind of began, like doing a show every week.
I'm repping college radio myself. Why do you think being involved in radio was so beneficial to your career?
It's so amazing that it allows you to like do interviews with bands like for instance or non-bands like you talk to Bunny
Yeah.
so from Rolling Loud, the legendary Bunny
And
from Rolling
Research on
Loud.
me, Nardwuar. Oh my God. I'm so honored.
Well, married, I think she is married to Matt Zinkler who
Yes,
runs Rolling
she
Loud.
is. Yes.
And how did you get that interview?
Yeah, I got to cover Rolling Loud under KCR, and it was such a surreal experience. Within like the past year, I think I've done work with like six festivals now, and I'm covering Camp Flognaw next weekend, so I'm super excited about that. But yeah, I just got a lot of opportunities under KCR and college radio.
And that's exactly how it works in Vancouver, Canada, too. Like, I got opportunities to interview different people. People would come to me, I do it to other people. It's amazing. Like,
It is.
through college radio, campus radio, we can be there right on the front lines. Whereas traditional media, maybe they have one person on the front lines, but the other people are like helpers. But here are you, Vanessa, right on the front lines. You're not running coffee for Vanessa. You are Vanessa. You don't have an assistant. You are like right there. That's a great thing too. Like for college radio, you're a producer, you're a writer, you're an operator, you're in total control. You can pretty much do whatever you want.
Yeah, that's the nice part about it because you have total creative freedom.
There are some people in commercial radio that are amazing, that have like amazing voices and personalities, but maybe like there's like you have a class, you go to like a journalism class. I was actually a volunteer coordinator at CITR Radio in Vancouver, Canada, where people would come into CITR and I was in charge of training them. And they would come in after going to a broadcast school and say, well, like, I'm not really that good. Some guy in my class is really good. He has an amazing deep voice. And I was like, well, the more strange, the more unique your voice is, the more you will stand out. Sure, that guy is amazing, but everybody can't be like that guy. Unfortunately, a lot of broadcast schools teach that, this is the way you do things, but sure, you can be really great, but the other 59 people in the class, they're not losers. There is a place for you. Just stick at it. It may take a long time, but eventually you'll get to the top. And that person with like a deep voice may eventually drop out. So eventually you replace that person, but it might take a long time.
Yeah, it's all about finding like your groove, essentially, and your authenticity and ability to connect with artists is what makes you such a legend in pop culture. My question for you is, how do you handle the pressure that comes with this career?
Well, thank you very much, Vanessa, for the kind words. I appreciate that. I guess the pressure is there's always pressure. So it's kind of like there was pressure from day one, especially with college radio. You'd be like doing an interview and somebody would phone in and say, "This is boring." So I'm still scared that somebody will phone in, even there are no phones around. Like, for instance, like if you're out there interviewing Bunny at Rolling Loud, there's no phones. I guess you could get a ring on your phone, but generally you're not broadcasting live, or you could be broadcasting live, but you wouldn't see what's happening. But I'm always living in fear of somebody saying, "This is boring. This is boring." So for me, that kind of propels me. That's the expectation. Like there is no expectation because there's always people phoning in. So there is no expectation because there's an expectation. Like you do it or you don't. It's like you do it, great. You're scared of the pressure, and then get the hell out.
Yeah,
There isn't any pressure because it's so much fun. It's like fun, isn't it? Like
it
it's not
is.
like operating on somebody to save their life, like the heart operation. We have to get everything perfect. It's like we're interviewing a band. We're talking to a pop culture person. Even we're talking to a politician, like we're doing part of the media. It isn't really that hard, is it?
No, it's just about, like I think the difficult thing really is just like making that connection, but I think you do that so well. And you're famously known for giving gifts to celebrities and like when you do the interviews. And I think I don't know how to explain it, but I love the way that you incorporate that because it makes it very personable. And that's key to the stuff.
For me, like you don't have to, like if for CITR radio and you do interviews also over the radio, like KCR, you can't really give a gift over the radio.
Yeah.
When somebody's phoning in from a phone booth, yes, I go back that long. When somebody's
Yeah.
phoning in, you can't give them a gift. But when they come out to the station, you could like pull out a record in a record library and say, well, "What do you think about this record?" So that's kind of what I thought about when I began to do gifts. Like if I couldn't interview the band in person, they couldn't come out to CITR, and I couldn't like ask them on their record or something like that, I would bring the record to them and I would show them and it would get them to talk. It's really just to get people to talk. You don't have to do it, but it helps because like if you're on the phone talking to somebody, they're like, "Yes, yes, yes, yes." And then you're in person, you hand them something, they're like, "Oh." And then maybe they go on and talk about it. And maybe they don't. But it's just a fun way to get, it's basically to get people to talk.
Yeah. And that's key with your interviews and stuff like that too, is attention to detail. How did you develop this unique interviewing style?
Like I said about the phone calls, like I'm always scared that somebody is going to phone in and critique you, and people will always phone in and critique you. It took a few years, like, I mean, I always begin interviews with "Who are you?" And I got that from like a 1970s or 80s like TV show called Putting on the Hits, where the host would always go, "Who are you? Who are you? What's your name and age?" And I would always end the interview with "Doot do
Do.
do because when people phoned into CITR radio, a lot of times when you listen to college radio or when you listen to like commercial radio, people phone in and
Mhm.
give their opinions, but then they just get what happens to the people? Like they phone in and then what happens? Like they talk and then
And then it's just bye.
they don't even say bye sometimes, right?
You can't even tell because then it's just like, oh, I'm still talking, but the conversation's over. Oh, yeah. It's very hard to
Exactly.
have that connection over the phone. Yeah.
Exactly, Vanessa. So people ask their question to the band or whatever, say whatever they want, and then I want to like usher them out. So I say, do,
Do.
and they know it's time to go. It's a polite way rather than just dumping them. It's kind of rude just to dump them. So I guess over the years, kind of developed that. And also like just taking time and doing interviews and learning how to do everything, but I'm still learning myself because like I appreciate your kind words, but I'm still learning. Like the minute I learn everything is probably the minute I quit, so I'm learning everything like
Also, like
constantly.
the new generation too. You've been doing this for so long, everything is constantly changing, and you have to like keep up with it.
They teach me stuff too. Like for instance, I interviewed Flo Millie a
Yeah.
couple years back when or just before she played Rolling Loud. I think it was 2021 or something like that. And that was showing her some photos that we had taken. And she was like, "Oh, I'd like these photos." And she like highlighted the photos, but I never knew an iPhone you could highlight the photos. Like she
Mm,
highlighted a whole row. I thought you'd have to do individual. So I
yeah.
learned something. Like I learned from her, like I learned from the new generation some tricks, etc. It's amazing. So you were learning something every day.
How do you get into Nardwuar mode when you do these interviews? Like, what's the research process like? What do you do? Like, do you do anything beforehand? Do you have like some type of like ritual, I guess?
I always carry with me, I think I have it today. I always have, like, speaking of rituals, a lucky chestnut. I
Ooh.
always have the lucky chestnut in my pocket. It's got nothing to do with like interviews, it's like luck for luck. So I always have the lucky chestnut. And also, I think like I'm lucky enough that, like, okay, I want to talk to so and so. Probably I'm doing my show a week. Like it's usually like every Friday I do my show. So I have a week to research that person. So like
Hmm.
I can research that person and I can get all the questions written out on cards. You don't have to write all your questions out on cards, but I like to write it on cards just in case you get nervous or you get flustered and you're like, oh, the publicist is going, come on, wrap it up. Come on, wrap it up. And you're like, oh, I want to ask one last thing. Otherwise, if you don't write it down, your friends might afterwards, or the listeners might go, "You talked to so and so and you didn't ask that?" I was like,
Yeah.
"Well, I was about to, but I forgot. I got flustered." But this way, it's like, as soon as I get flustered, oh, I can look down my notes and I can see what happened. So I guess, doing the research, putting the notes together, then talking to my friends to help out with camera. In the case of like doing a remote interview, I talked about the Flo Millie interview. I got my friend Stephanie, who lives in California, to help with the interview, and she brought her husband along, Joey, to help as well. So it was like Stephanie and Joey. So there's some other stuff to arrange, and then the transportation. I'm looking at like a one-person DIY operation. And as you mentioned, as I mentioned, the social media, which Flomili taught me a few things about. You can highlight stuff. It so it's kind of like a long process, but I try to keep it to like about a week. Some stuff is ongoing. Like I have an ongoing file for, Paul McCartney. It's my dream to talk to him or something like that. So I have that on my computer, but generally it's about a week I sort of prepare. And then it's fun to like wear different sort of outfits. I always have a shirt. Actually,
Yes.
interesting. Like in that same trip I talked to Flo Millie, also did an interview with Jack Harlow, and I was wearing this shirt. So I remember this shirt from the interview that I did.
You can resonate. You're like, oh, this day I interviewed that person and I wore this. And so every time you wear it, it's like a little memory that comes along with it.
Yeah, it brings it back. So yeah, having the shirt, having the research questions, having some sort of like gifts to give the people, dressing up and putting on my tartan pants, getting ready to go.
Yeah. I love that. You're also known for like your outfits, your authenticity and stuff like that. So it's cool that you stand out in so many different ways.
Yeah, it's fun having all this sort of like stuff. Like a lot of stuff I get from like I got this from a clothing store in Vancouver called Berjou's Angels, and
Ooh.
I have like so much stuff from them. I wear it all the time. I don't always wear out, my tartan pants because I got them in 1999, and I'm afraid that they might actually break. I keep bringing them in to get repaired, but they keep getting ripped. So I'm really afraid. But they're the Tiger of London brand. They aren't that hard to get. In fact, when I interviewed Kelly Rowland of Destiny's Child, she said, "Hey, I have those pants. We have those pants." And I thought, oh, that's amazing. Can you imagine the entire Destiny's Child dressed in tartan Tiger of London pants? That would have been amazing. So
With you as
basically,
well. All four of you.
yeah, yeah, well, and also, yeah, exactly. It would have been, but when I talked to her, Beyonce wasn't there. at
Mm,
that time. I
mm.
did talk to Destiny's Child before another time, but it was only like for 2 minutes, like running from the dressing room to the
Yeah.
stage. And I only talked to Kelly. Beyonce was there and Michelle was there, but they were kind of in their zone, ready to go on stage. But when Kelly, I did manage to go do do lutu,
Do.
and you can actually see that on YouTube as it like the cart is pulling away and I'm running after her. She went doo doo. So that made the interview, and I was done in Tacoma, Washington,
Wow, that is
a
so
festival they were
awesome.
playing. But that was many years ago. So yeah, that was the Destiny's Child. That was the Destiny's Child era. But basically, yeah. So if people want to look like me, Tiger of London pants, and if people want to act like me, well, anybody can do it. Like I'm there to inspire. Like if people hear me, people might go like, I can do what that guy does. Well, good, do it, please do it. Don't leave it to me.
I know you've interviewed like tons of people over your like enormous years of interviewing, but are there any that stand out to you? And also, I'm just curious, what is the strangest way somebody has reacted to like a gift of yours?
For reactions, I would have to say Denzel Curry. It was amazing when I interviewed Denzel Curry. He like walked away from me. That was an amazing. I just was looking at that the other day. It's like he actually walked out of a room to another room back to me. That is quite a reaction. Like
Yeah.
to actually physically move away. Actually, Little Uzi Vert said, "You know too much," and then ran away. And I ran after him and I got him to go do, and he ended up sampling that for Futsal Shuffle. So here he is run away
Cool.
from me, but it was worthwhile for me to run after him because he ended up sampling me, which is totally mind boggling me. Like, I cannot believe that somebody sampled a dumb, stupid interviewer. When I started interviewing years ago, I never thought that, the interviewer would become part of the music, but he sampled that. So, like, I'm so grateful. And you mentioned kind of like people that like who do I like to talk to? Like you mentioned you're going to the Camp Flogna Fest coming up.
Yes.
And you've talked to Omar Apollo before, or you've been to some of his gigs?
I've been to Omar Apollo. I've not talked to him yet, but I've been.
And he is playing too.
Yeah, he is playing. I'm super excited. I love
And
Omar.
and he has like a deal with Taco Bell, which is amazing, which
Yeah.
there aren't many in Canada at
Oh,
all.
yeah.
But the festival is put on by Tyler the Creator, and I love talking to him. And I love to get an opportunity. I'm not sure, but I'd love to get an opportunity to speak to him again. And I love talking to people like him because he's like such a hip hop historian, like
Right?
Questlove of the Roots, like Tyler the Creator. You can like show a record, and they'll talk about that actual record, which is totally amazing. So I love that when you can like just hold up the mic and let the person go.
Yeah, totally. So that means you're going to Camp Flogna next weekend.
Yes, I'm hoping to. Touch wood. Everything will
So
go on
exciting.
schedule. Also, yes, I'm part of the traveling Nardwuar video vault that's coming to San Diego
Yes.
as well.
I was going to say how I noticed how your LA date is like right before the weekend. So I was going to ask you if you're going to Camp Flogna anyway, but
Yes,
transitioning
yes, I
for
I
you.
made special room for the Camp Flognas. Yeah. So the tour stops like the Wednesday in San Francisco, the 13th, the Friday, the 15th in LA, and then it stops and resumes in San Diego. So yeah, we do take a bit of a detour.
Let's talk about your mini tour that you're going on. You're stopping in San Diego at the Music Box November 20th. What should people expect from the show?
I'm going to play some of my favorite interviews and clips and talk, and there'll be a question and answer, sort of like this. It's not going to be like, oh, compilations that you've seen on YouTube. It's like I'll isolate them and talk about them and talk about the significance as well. So it's a fun little sort of like venture into the world of Nardwuar to Human Serviette. Like this
Uh,
to like, again, inspire people. Like if I can do it, anybody can do it. Just, it might take a bit of time, but stick with it.
And it's also great because you get to interact with people who have been fans of you for so long, who are inspired by you. So it's cool that you get to have this personal connection with them if they go to the event.
Oh, I'm so inspired. Like some people over Halloween dressed up as me. And that we did the event in New York and people dressed up as me. Like it's such an honor. I'm savoring that moment. It's like I'm not like, oh, somebody dressed. I'm like told I cannot believe it. And other people that know me, like, hey Nardwuar, did you tell people to dress up as you? It's like, no, they did it on their own. I'm like so flattered by
That
that.
is so cool. You know what? Maybe at the San Diego show, everybody will be dressed as you. How cool would that be?
I wouldn't know what to do. That's amazing. Well, I would definitely take a photo and document it exactly like that.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's basically everything I have, but I'm hoping to be at the San Diego show too, so maybe we will meet formally.
Thank you so much for the interest. And actually, I should say, how did you first hear of me, Vanessa?
Oh my gosh. How did I first hear of you? I think like when I was in middle school, well, for reference, I'm now a junior in college, but I think in middle school I came across a video. I think it was you interviewing Tyler. And I just remember thinking this is unlike anything I've ever seen in my entire life. And you kind of inspired me to join my college radio. And then I remember like my first interview, I was so nervous and I was like, what would Nardwuar do? I literally thought that. What would Nardwuar do? And it's funny that you brought up Rolling Loud because I had an artist that I interviewed. He like was like, "Oh, you're on your Nardwuar stuff," and I thought it was like the highest compliment ever. So you're a huge inspiration to me.
Oh, thank you so much. That is amazing. And for nervousness, I'm nervous all the time. I'm nervous talking to you, Vanessa. It's good
Yeah,
because that inspires you to want to do something, to go out and find information. So every time I do an interview, so it's good to be nervous before your interviews. Now, true, you kind of like eventually you lighten up. It doesn't become as nervous, but like once you get going, but it takes a while to warm up. So
yeah,
it's good. I think a lot of times, a lot of performers will say, "Oh, I'm never nervous. I can go on stage or whatever." It's like, well, then why are you kind of not doing it? You're not nervous because you're not caring what people think. Well, if you don't care what people think, then you should probably quit because it's important what people think. If people think something bad, well, maybe report them to the police. But usually, people that think bad things or tell you what's bad are your friends, and your enemies are people that don't say anything. So it's good kind of to get some feedback. It's good to feel nervous. What do people think? Well, of course, if people think really bad things, maybe, as I said, report them to the police or
yes,
whatever.
yeah,
But so, yeah, don't feel bad. Don't feel nervous when you're doing stuff.
yeah. But that's basically all I have. I just want to thank you again for this opportunity. This was awesome.
Well, thank you again, Vanessa. I really appreciate the kind words and do do do.
Do do.